Welcome back. You're watching Bottomline Africa. It's now time for the discussion. Human rights group Amnesty International wants the Kenyan police and the South Sudanese authorities to ensure effective, transparent and impartial investigations into the enforced disappearance of two South Sudanese critics in Nairobi more than 2 years ago. The families of Dong Samuel Luak and Agri Esbon Idri have waited patiently for the truth for 2 years, their lives in limbo. In studio to shed more light on this case are Saif Magango of Amnesty International East Africa, the Horn and the Great Lakes Deputy Director. Many thanks for making time. We also have James Pollitt, who's the younger brother to Dong Samuel Luak, Aya Benjamin as well, who is the wife to Agri Esbon Idri. Many thanks for making time.
Thank you.
All right, let's just start it out from 2017, especially with the family members. On January 23rd and 24th, that's when these two individuals actually disappeared. I know your lives have been in limbo. Let me start with the wife right here. What is your current state of emotion in respect to the latest ruling by the court in regard to the disappearance of your husband?
I feel abandoned. We've been waiting in these 2 years. Many members of the family had gone into depression. We are dealing with that. And for us to get this ruling, it's like nobody knows, nobody understands what we are going through as family. It hasn't been easy at all.
All right, James, 2 years is definitely a very long time. As the younger brother to Dong Samuel, who disappeared in 2017, is there any word from either the Kenyan police or the South Sudanese authorities in regards to any developments in this disappearance?
Well, thank you for having me. There's no word from both sides, whether in Kenya or in South Sudan. The only thing we have been getting, we have been in court. There's nothing that we have gotten about the whereabouts of the two persons. The only thing we have gotten is the court ruling that was delivered. Yes.
Okay, now I get a sense of feeling that the family is pointing an accusing finger at the government. Even before we engage Saif right there, why is this?
Well, I think it is the right option for the families to point fingers at the authorities, because we are calculating the nature of these persons. These are not ordinary citizens like myself in the streets of Kenya or South Sudan. These are mature people with hierarchy in the society. So there's a reason why the people are pointing fingers at the authorities, because definitely they are the right people to look into what happened. Yes.
All right. Now, Saif Magango, you work with Amnesty International, and you're among various bodies, including the Human Rights Watch, that has actually pointed an accusing finger at both governments. That's the Kenyan government and the South Sudanese government. Let's just take a look at the hearing on February 5th, 2018. The police said they could not access some of the witnesses and they had no further leads, but would keep that file open. Now, in this latest ruling made on January 17th, which is the final judgment, they dismissed the petition, saying that the police had acted prudently and within the law. Now, are you contesting the ruling of the court, number one? And perhaps you can build up on the question I asked him, why the accusing finger on both governments?
Well, this case is clearly a case that has brought a lot of agony, that has been quite concerning for us as human rights organizations, not only because we care about the families that and the agony they're going through, the suffering for not seeing their loved ones and not knowing where they are for these 2 years, but clearly this is a classic case of enforced disappearance under international human rights law. You can't help but ask questions of the Kenyan government, because these two individuals were in Kenya, they were here legally, they had fled their country in 2013 at the outbreak of the violence there. And they were well-known critics of the government. And one day they are abducted from the streets, and the court actually acknowledged that, saying that this was a criminal abduction by unknown persons. And they're taken to South Sudan. They are seen in South Sudan only 2-3 days later, detained at the detention facility of the National Intelligence and Security Service. So the fact they were in this country, when we are in a country like Kenya, in any country, the government is the one that is obligated to protect the people within that country. You and I cannot just get up and leave the country without any authorization. You'd have to go through the airport. You'd be tracked. There would be stamps in your passport. You'd go. There are ways that the government must ensure that people are not taken out of the country illegally. So the fact that it's not the fact that they left this country and were taken to South Sudan, and procedurally, only the Kenyan government can answer that question. But not just only the Kenyan government, to the extent that they were taken out of this country without proper authorization, arbitrarily picked up and taken, the Kenyan government is answerable for that. When they get to South Sudan and they are seen in government facilities, and this is credible evidence, and then they are disappeared, then the South Sudan government is the one obligated to tell us where they are. But the court case in Kenya, for it to admit, first of all, the court to admit that there was a disappearance, and then 2 years later absolve itself of responsibility for overseeing the police investigation, leaves the families in limbo and raises questions about who will oversee the police, which has failed to investigate for all this time.
All right, we'll get back to who is overseeing, but Mama, allow me to ask you this particular question. We've had that they were seen in South Sudan. Who exactly saw them, and how can we substantiate these claims?
A friend of theirs, Will, from South Africa, he was in Blue House when my husband and his colleague arrived Juba.
Blue House is
the national security facility where they were first seen. So Will was there. When these people arrived, he actually saw them. I confirmed that. I talked to him myself. And it's all over the media.
And it's all over the media?
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of the investigations that have been done so far, both by the Kenyan police and perhaps if there were any investigations on the South Sudanese side, what holes are you poking in this particular investigations to show that, both sides did not do a proper job in substantiating that these guys were actually taken? Yes, the court said they were taken against the will and it was not right, but in terms of this claims that are being said that they are in captivity in South Sudan, why are you poking holes in the investigations, and what exactly is weak in these particular investigations?
Well, to make it clear, there were no investigations at all in South Sudan. But in Kenya, there have been some investigations. But I'm sure if there were serious investigation being done by the police, we should have gotten to the bottom line of this matter long time ago. The investigation that were done, they're not really satisfying. Yes.
All right.
Coming on that one.
Yes.
One thing for sure is that there's no record of the Kenyan government of formally requesting cooperation of the South Sudan government. They've not requested for the South Sudan government to provide any information with regard to these two individuals. And that is quite problematic, because if they could have shown evidence that, yes, they tried, then you'd have said, okay, they caught, the police have done what they can to investigate. But they didn't make that effort. So it raises questions. How then do you say that, how then do we know that an investigation really took place when one party that may have provided evidence was not even contacted?
All right. Now, in terms of actually pursuing legal redress in this particular case. According to the judgment given, they gave an option of pursuing that avenue of the Internal Police Oversight Authority. Is this a viable route, according to you, number one? And might it actually yield some fruits that, that weren't yielded in terms of that particular case?
We only have to hope, because one thing is for sure, we are not going to give up in searching for Dong and Agri. We have to try all avenues to try and get to the bottom of the matter. But this was an issue that apparently, if you look at the evidence, it looks like a case where one government allowed another government to take certain critics out of the country. If the courts of law have tried to enforce an investigation by the police and it has been clearly, evidently unsuccessful, how likely is it that then the Internal Oversight of IPOA will manage to do this? We have to continue to pursue this case, but I think the fact that the court made the ruling that it made does not mean that the investigation has stopped.
All right.
The Kenyan police must continue to investigate and then correct the mistakes they made, get in touch with the South Sudanese authorities to give them the information that they have, and continue to push that we know the whereabouts and the fate of these individuals. And we have to also continue to push the South Sudan government to ensure that they come clean, because there's not much debate on where they were last seen. They were seen in the custody of the South Sudan government. And remember that if it was only one case that you're talking about, enforced disappearances have been used, enforced disappearances of critics of the government has been a hallmark of this conflict in South Sudan. You'll have heard of the case of the former spokesperson of the SPLM-IO, who was taken out of Nairobi and taken to South Sudan. So this is not an isolated case.
Yes. And as we conclude very briefly, I'll give the chance to Aya Benjamin to speak on behalf of both families. Perhaps, what is the way forward for both families? We've heard that Amnesty International will definitely keep pushing. The way forward, or any appeal you may give?
Thank you. On behalf of the two families, I just want to speak straight to the President of Kenya. We are requesting him to help us talk to President Kiir so that we'll know the whereabouts of our loved ones. Yeah, that's my message, short and precise.
Okay,
yeah.
Many thanks. Due to constraints of time, we have to end it right there. But it has been very informative. At least Seth Magango has actually given us the way forward that Amnesty International will actually keep pushing to substantiate where these two individuals are according to where they were last seen. Many thanks, Seth. James Polit, who's the young